chronic diseases and other illnesses. Join me on New Health Chat every Thursday at 9 p.m. on UBC TV, sponsored by National Medical Stores, who are mandated to procure, store and distribute essential medicines and medical supplies to all public health facilities in the country.
Uganda, the land of sunshine. Breathtaking, stunning sights, incredibly extensive large greenery. Variety of wild animals and bird species. A wide range of luxury holiday facilities.
It is intellectually engaging.
Court does not sit to waste its time. If you have no defense, it chases you.
It is a ruling on the foundations. Business has been conducted in a certain way.
Banks take money from us, depositors. All of us seated here have got money in the bank. And even before you walk out, they've given that money to somebody else.
Deeply incisive.
The law enjoins us to be answerable to the sovereign of the country.
Our members of the force, we have always been demanding officers to be highly disciplined and being accountable to people of Uganda.
Authentically symbolic and insightful.
We should work so hard to evacuate this power.
Behind the headlines, every Wednesday at 10 p.m. with Charles Odongto.
A very welcome.
Probably the most experienced talk show moderator in Uganda, with a team of illustrious panelists. Honorable Margaret Mohanga, a veteran journalist, legislator, entrepreneur and development consultant, and Ramadan Gobi, an economist and university don.
I've really got perturbed that in Uganda we are building parties with no membership subscription.
All on your public broadcaster, UBC, inspiring Uganda.
A very good evening and welcome to this edition of Behind the Headlines. This March, Wednesday, March the 10th, 2021, the year of our Lord, and we have a topic on our hands, and it's a good day, and we will be discussing, taking a look at Ugandan, Kenyan trade wars, if you want to call it, or cold, the trade Cold War, if you like. But a lot of things happening between the borders of Uganda and Kenya, and as well as Tanzania, Kenya, and trade issues. We are going to be discussing that. What exactly is the truth behind the headlines? What exactly is happening behind the scenes? And 100 by today, what we know is that close to 175 trucks of goods, especially maize, which had already entered Kenya, over 300 kilometers, over 250 kilometers, somewhere in Nakuru, turned back to Uganda, and with claims that they don't meet the standards that the Kenyans need. So we will be asking the question, what is the truth behind this? And how do we resolve the matter? Can Uganda take certain, resolutions that can resolve this matter once and for all? This is not a new matter. And to discuss that, we have Mr. Stephen Asimwe, who is the Director for Policy and Business Development at the Private Sector Foundation Uganda. Stephen, you're most welcome to this show.
Thank you, Charles, and good evening, viewers.
It's good to have you and to see you after a while. And if the last time, I know many people know you for, I think, the Uganda Tourism Board, but now you are in a different world. But it's good to have you.
Thank you.
And we have also our own Mr. Ramadan Gobi, who is a policy analyst, economist, and a university lecturer at Makerere University Business School. He is a panelist on this show. You're most welcome back, sir.
Thank you, Charles, and good evening to the viewers.
Good. We may not have Honorable Margaret Muhanga. She's not feeling well. Margaret, if I know you're listening in, you're viewing this show, this is your place. Please, we wish you all the best, and we pray that you get better. But the Honorable Matthias Kasamba, who is MP for East African Legislative Assembly, we are still expecting him. He confirmed he would be here with us, a very important person for this show, someone from the legislative arm of the East African community through IALA. We expect you to be on this show, Matthias. If you're listening in, please rush. But otherwise, we have to start the discussion. Let me start with you, Stephen. 175 trucks is certainly a huge number. And if we look at it coming from the past, what exactly have you heard is happening as, you know, the leaders of the business community in this country?
Thank you, Charles. That's a very pertinent question. There have been a series of events that have happened to the run-up of today. If I could just work from the most immediate backwards, we've had close to 4 meetings today as private sector. I represent the...
On the same?
Yes, on the same. I represent the Private Sector Foundation, which is an apex body of all private sector players, ranging from manufacturing, agribusiness, trade, exporters, farmers, small-scale business people, a cross-section of our membership of over 250 members, spanning 12 sectors. And we've had back-to-back meetings since. And the background to this discussion was the fact that last week the Kenya government banned entry of Uganda's maize into their country. This was by the Food and Drug Administration, and the point that they were raising was that Uganda's maize, Uganda and Tanzania's maize had aflatoxins and mycotoxins, which are affecting the health of their people. However, we need also to put this in context. There's also been about 3 weeks ago, mid-February, there was another statement issued in respect to stopping poultry and eggs into their country. And you remember last year, there was also a series of the country stopping milk exports into their country, sugarcane, and many things. So be that as it may, it's been coming gradually, but this time around, I must commend our media and the country at large for, if you have been seeing the amount of traffic that has been exchanged on the social media platforms. Our 2 big newspapers, New Vision and Monitor, had center spreads basically describing what is essentially a trade war, if you like. Now, back to the question of the trucks being stopped, a lot of tonnage was stopped ostensibly on the fact that this ban was being put in effect, stopping our country. Now, since 8 o'clock of this morning, after the public holiday of Women's Day, We've had meetings with the Grain Council of Uganda. We've had the East African Grain Council. We have had exporters. We've had the Export Promotions Board. We've had different groups that have interests, food and agricultural experts meeting today. We've had to convene meetings with the East African community. In our view, there are two issues really. Number one is the fact that the spirit of the East African community integration is really at a very serious test right now for factors that include the protocol of joint cooperation. Uganda is Kenya's biggest trading partner.
Yes.
As far as we are concerned, we've had very good trading relations with our brothers and sisters across the border, and this in many ways affects us both in terms of our exports, but it also affects so many other supply chains, including the farmers, the transporters, the logisticians, the warehousing people, and many other things. The second one, of course, is something we need to look internally. So the first one is external. The second one is the internal. Now it raises issues of our issues concerning standards, our post-harvest handling systems, our transportations, our capacity to enforce issues to do with those aflatoxins, etc., etc. How are we organized as a country?
Good.
As a sector. So those are the things that we've been discussing. But the point that culminated in today's series of meetings was that we need to have serious discussions with our neighbors. And so we've engaged the Ministry of Trade, we've engaged the Ministry of East African Cooperation. We are talking to, as far as I know, government is talking to the High Commission in Kampala to discuss these issues of closing our borders. So I think that in the process of this evening's discussion, we'll discuss the depth, the details of this whole scenario. Yeah.
Okay, good. You have broadened the discussion right from the beginning. Mr. Gobi, from what Stephen says, do you read a trade war going on already? Or is it still simmering? Can we still say this is still simmering? Or this has reached a point where now there is a trade war? And do you think that the issues are just the maybe before I go further, I need to request that since we have sufficient social distance between the three of us, I will discharge my soft parts of this beautiful thing called the face mask. Do you think that the issues are just those two, the partnership in the region for trade and as well as integration, and then at an internal level, the issue of standards? Are they just those two, or where do you look at this from?
Thank you, Charles. I think we need really to realize that for now some time, this region has been embarking on the resurgence of inward-looking policies. In economics, we call it mercantilism. Every country wants to export more, but they don't want to import from others. The early traders of the 15th century, they used to think that that's how countries get rich, by limiting the imports of others and for you just export. The East African community, when it was protocol, when it was entered in 1999, it helped this region to actually show each other, each country, that we need each other. And if we are to protect anything, we need to protect as a region, as the East African community, but not necessarily as individual countries. And for us who are in the business of research and teaching Ugandans, we have found that this arrangement has actually worked very well. Trade has smoothed over years.
Trading blocks.
Yes. The East African community has worked very well to smoothen trade. That, you know, Kenya used to dominate the export side. It was the only country mainly exporting the manufactured goods to the rest of this region. Now, over time, without Kenya losing, we saw trade export performance of other countries also growing. And Uganda has been one of those countries which benefited. Of course, Rwanda, Burundi, also to some extent. Tanzania hasn't been trading with us largely, historically. Tanzania, they prefer to trade with Southern Africa, SADC. And when you look in the data, you will see that actually Tanzania exports to us, but it does not import from us as a region. But Uganda, Kenya, Rwanda, and
South
to
Sudan.
some extent Burundi. Now South Sudan came in later.
How about Congo?
Congo is a superb market for all of us, but also a one-way trade. We are mainly exporting there. We are not importing from Congo as a region. So now with the resurgence of this inward looking when COVID came, but before even COVID came, we had already started to say that let us buy Uganda, build Uganda. Kenya said let the Kenyans buy Kenya and build Kenya. Tanzanians also were let Tanzanians buy Tanzania and build Tanzania, and so on and so forth. So each country started to behave as if we were individual units. Still the Soviet countries, nationalism came back, and many economists have been warning that these are not good signs for the EAC. But somehow the leaders have been trying to talk at personal level. Like I remember, this is not the first time Kenya is doing this to our products. Every time they ban our product, our president calls the
president the other side,
Kenyatta, Uhuru, and they strike a deal, and then they reopen somehow, a smaller window. But now it reached a point when it became ridiculous, especially at that time of the milk, that time of the poultry products, the sugar, then the cane, and so on. Now maize. When maize letter came out on 5th March, I read it, and I saw that much as Kenya has had this problem of, you remember the story, Charles, of the shepherd boy and the wolf. That boy used to lie neighbors.
The one who used to, the wolf.
Yes, that the wolf was eating his sheep.
Yes.
And now at one moment, actually,
the wolves actually came.
The wolves came. So Kenya has been using a lot of things to deny us access to that market. But now on the maize issue, there is this very issue of aflatoxin in this region, and it is a genuine cause. Many people in this country have been debating about it. The way we handle food is not good, especially cereals, but also other food, vegetables and so on. So they could have used this as an excuse to actually go on with their trade war of stopping Uganda from recapturing the Kenyan market. But they have a genuine excuse of aflatoxin, because ourselves, we have been speaking without acting on this matter. When my friends, the Grain Council of Uganda, they are very good friends of mine, Kurisi Kaijuka, Mzee Chris Kaijuka and his team. They have been having conversations over this. How does government help them to address this issue of aflatoxin? The Uganda Bureau of Standards is trying its best, but this is not where the aflatoxin begins. It begins from farmers. The way farmers are handling the food, the cereals, when they harvest is unacceptable. Putting in a sack, you put in the corner of a house, chickens are jumping on top, dropping their droppings in the maize. Then in the morning, they pour on the bare ground to dry. So all these issues have been discussed on how do we improve post-harvest management, handling and management, without practical kind of solutions to it. Then now we are having now this problem. Of course, Kenya is not, shouldn't behave that they are angels. There are reports which indicate that actually Kenyan maize is the dirtiest, the one which they grow in Kenya.
I actually have got, today it was a big discussion in Parliament, and we will be discussing those interventions from Parliament and from government as well. But actually, I got some real statistics of comparing the three, so I'm going to soon share, but after you have finished your...
Let me finish.
Yeah.
So they have very dirty maize. They have highest levels of aflatoxin, so it's no wonder that they are concerned, because it has actually killed the people there. And they come and say, Uganda, we are stopping your maize. But ask yourself, when you go to Grain Council, they will tell you, most of the grain which goes to Kenya is actually taken by the Kenyans themselves through informal trade. They come here, they go to the gardens, they go to the farmers, because Uganda is so open, you know, for us, as I always tell you, when someone told us open up,
we just removed the door and threw away.
Out the door and threw it away. So Kenyans come, they go to Masindi, they go to Chiriandongo, they go everywhere, and they pick maize from farmers. They take this dirty maize, which is not processed, through informal trade, because it is cheaper, and they exploit the farmers, of course. 80% of our grain traded in Kenya passes through informal channels. It's only 20% which the traders that are regulated by their associations and the Ministry of Trade through the East African Grain Council and the Grain Council of Uganda is taken formally. Only 20%. So who therefore should be blamed for the dirty maize? And you know, the TGCU has been trying to talk to government that please try to close a bit this. And you know, in Uganda we say, no, these are our brothers and sisters. Let us continue this way. So I think this, to me, is a good rude awakening, which is going to help us to streamline this also industry, which is growing very fast, very lucrative. There are unconfirmed reports that just recently, in the month of January, we exported over 500,000 metric tons of maize to Kenya. Actually, perhaps they had a plan which was they were holding for some time, that let us import and stock for some time, and then we first, you know, close the border. So over 500,000 tons went in, equivalent of about $112 million, according to some of the numbers I've looked at. And this is now a conversation we need to have. But before even we discuss just maize, we need to discuss really the future of the ESC vis-a-vis industrial policy. Because industrial policy is good for the development of a country. And it has come back in our region. Uganda is implementing it. We want to protect our markets. But should we talk of buy Uganda, build Uganda, buy Kenya, build Kenya, buy Tanzania, build Tanzania? Or we need a Buy East Africa, Build East Africa, such that we can agree that these goods are going to be produced only by East Africans, and then we sort out ourselves by each country specializing in a particular of those commodities, for example, using comparative advantage. Who is better suited for maize? Who is better suited for coffee? Who is better suited for dairy products? Who is better suited? Than each of these small units called the countries trying to protect their small territories, and at the end of the day, we fail our people.
Okay, good. Thanks, Mr. Gobi. So I got the latest revelations from on aflatoxin volumes in some of the different crop products that we have. On maize, the latest that is available says that Uganda, the volume of aflatoxin, I think it is measured in mg, milligrams. The Uganda has 9.7. Tanzania has, in maize, Tanzania has 49.7. And Kenya has 131.7 aflatoxin in maize. In granules, available information shows that Uganda is doing badly here, that Uganda has 25.1, Tanzania has 15, Burundi has 12.5. Burundi is exactly half of Uganda. There Uganda is doing very badly. Maize, incidentally, which has been banned this week or last week, Kenya is actually doing terribly badly, if there is such a description.
Yeah.
Then come to let me see which other one can we compare. Cassava chips. In cassava chips, not so bad, but Uganda is doing at 0.5, and then Tanzania 0.9. And then in milk, Kenya is at 0.8, Tanzania at 0.9. They don't have the figures. This does not have the figures of contamination, aflatoxin contamination for Uganda here. Now, this then brings me to the question is, and I'm saying this, I'm asking this, I know, without any prejudice. We couldn't get anyone from the East African community. We got someone, but many of the people we got feared because of the political implication in case they made statements here that affect them politically. But is Kenya being honest with saying that they are banning Ugandan products because of aflatoxin? Why shouldn't the truth be brought out that this is where the issue is? And I need Stephen to be the one to start us on that. In your conversation, because I guess the private sector this side discusses very well with the Kenyan counterparts, is Kenya really being honest as a country, a partner, a close brother in the region, that we are banning your products because of aflatoxin, or there is something else they are hiding that we need to, call them out on?
Yeah, thanks, Charles. That's a very interesting question. Now, I think let's put some things in context.
Yeah.
The average Kenyan takes maize in form of porridge for breakfast. At break, they eat a cob of maize.
Yes.
At lunchtime, they have ugali, what we call kaunga here. Posho. In the evening, they go and take, for those who drink, they have something called changa, which is it's like kwete. It's one of its biggest ingredients is maize. Then they have nyama choma, and in Kenya they eat nyama choma, not like Ugandans with soup. They eat roasted meat with posho, with that ugali. So your typical average Kenyan takes maize at every 2 hours or whatever it is. So in terms of consumption, maize is life in Kenya, no doubt about it. So that's at the consumptive level. Your average per capita consumption of maize is many kilograms per day. Number two, again, let's put this in context. Like Professor said, a lot of the smallholder business people are Kenyans. If you looked at if a Ugandan truck went to the border, they would not allow it to cross in many instances. It is actually the Kenyans who come, buy at different levels. They buy at farm gate, some even buy in garden. So they book the maize even long before it's harvested. Fast forward, so you have the informal trade, which is huge.
Yeah.
And informal in many ways. There's those who come with a bicycle, those who come with a small truck, you know, the Dianas. They are the bulk buyers who take in lorry loads. And then there are those who take. But a lot of it is very, very informal. Now, Charles, you need to also understand that food is also politics.
Yes.
Food is a political issue.
Big politics.
I know that there are governments which have collapsed because there was no bread. You saw what happened in Egypt, Sudan
recently.
Tunisia, Algeria, all over the world. Bread is life. So bread in the context of Kenya is also, bread is maize. And it's a political issue. Now, if you remember round about the other last election, there was an instance where...
Ours or Kenyan?
Kenya's election.
Yeah.
I beg your pardon. There was an instance where Kenya imported bulk maize imports from Brazil. And it undercut our prices here so badly that Brazilian maize is very cheap. Although you could talk about the taste and, you know, whether it makes good changa or not is an issue there. But so this war is not a new one, especially in respect to maize. It's been around. It's just that it has been different. Now, the context I also want to bring this in is that next year Kenya is going into an election.
They're going into election.
So in Kenya you have people who have produced maize in bulk, you know, square miles of maize. And a new terminology has been coined along the lines of the maize cartel.
Yes.
In the social media, I have seen some people calling it the maize mafia. And that comes in with the element of price. So last year we had a problem of COVID. And last year was also the year when we really had very good rains. So Uganda produced a bumper harvest. And we have over 100,000 schools, which are the biggest consumers of this maize locally.
Yes.
So the COVID came with lack of consumption, and at the same time the rains brought overproduction. So there was oversupply against low demand because people were at home. So you had people stuck with stocks of maize which were not being consumed by schools. You're looking at about 15 million consumers in schools, primary, secondary, universities, the others, of course, hospitals, the army, police, prisons, etc. And so Uganda over time has had overcapacity in terms of stocks and no consumption. So naturally the economics comes in, so you have low prices. Now what happens is that in Kenya you also have these people who have been doing maize at a very large scale and obviously want it to be consumed by the local market. So because of overproduction on the Ugandan side, low consumption, schools are not going, low prices, prices have fallen to as low as 250 shillings.
Actually, in some places at even 100.
At even 100.
Because I was told along the border, the eastern border, Tororo, and MP was telling me,
absolutely,
it came down to 100, 150.
Absolutely. So you have good roads.
From 600, 700.
These guys come with the trucks, they go past the border, and like my good professor says, the door is too open. It's actually a gate.
There is no door.
At 100 shillings, which businessman doesn't want to take this? And yet, by the way, when it gets on the other side, and this maize is milled, the price goes up. And there is a bumper, knockoff by the Kenyan dealers. So actually, the conflict is at home. You have Kenyan small-scale people making a killing against the big boys in Kenya making losses because of very cheap imports coming in from Uganda. So that brought a problem. It brought a problem economically. It brought friction between the big boys and the small boys. But it also brought a problem for us as a country, especially for the organized sector. Professor earlier mentioned the fact that the Grain Council has an organized system, a very, very organized system, warehoused, with standards, with certification, quality assurance seals. But you see, they were also competing against these small people crossing the borders in the informal trade. So naturally, the thing kicked up a storm, and people started raising issues of aflatoxins, which, by the way, had been there anyway. But now you need to get your, it's like an offside in football, when you cross the line, so you have to do a VAR. Let's go back to the drawing board. Where is the problem? Yeah. So that context is important to describe the events leading up to this point in time. But Charles, we also need to know that because we are getting into an election year in Kenya next year, 2022, there have also been dynamics by certain consumer groups, business people in Kenya, who are questioning the low prices at home, and why is it that there's this avalanche of cheap maize that is coming in, and then of course they're raising the issue of aflatoxin. But with that said, the discussions of today actually opened up deeper questions about our ability to be able to be resilient, especially in the face of such economic tides. And I think for me that's where the big issue lies.
The big issue there.
Yeah.
We need to go into it. We definitely need to go into it. Maybe we should start on it immediately. The question of let's start with the internal. Let's start with the internal, Stephen, if you like. From your viewpoint as the public sector, and I know that you do a lot of work to try and educate different business persons, the different traders across the country, building capacity for trade and trade, trade policy discussions, trade negotiations, discussing with Parliament on how better to help the Ugandan traders and all that, markets. Let's start from the issue of standards. Are we up to the point? Because if you look at the issues about our grains, starting with them, even before we even go into the milk, the thing that comes to my mind going back is when COVID struck and government decided that we are going to put, I think it was it 59 or 85 billion shillings to buy food for its people who are, in dire need. That food alone created a problem. You remember, that there are some people who are still in jail. Part of the issues around that was, buying or selling or giving to the people bad quality foods, which then makes our case hard to argue. Even if Kenyans are using a different hidden reason to deny us to export to their country, there is our own problem, which everybody is saying, first fix this even for ourselves. How do we start from there? Starting with government, and then as private sector, how do you come in? How must it be done?
Thank you, Charles. That's a very, very good point. I was just looking at, we had a meeting on the 17th of February.
This year?
This year, last month actually.
Yeah.
And it was a meeting convened by the grain stakeholders in Uganda, and with Ministry of Finance, the Grain Council, and the World Bank. The IFC actually came up with a support fund of close to $20 million to support Uganda.
That's about 70 plus billion.
Yeah, support Uganda on the backward linkages, because this issue is not new, by the way. And the issue was the post-handling of our commodities, especially maize, which we have a strategic advantage over many of our neighbors. And the issue here was that what do we need to do? What policies do we need to put in place? What measures do we need to put in place? What infrastructure do we need to put in place? Both hardware and software. The issues that emerged were issues to do with mindset. Like you said, people throwing maize anywhere. If you drive on highways now, you find a lot of produce being dried in the sun. On
the roadside.
Everything from coffee to cassava to whatever. And you know, people need to be trained. And I think for me, these are issues that we need to quickly intervene. Things to do with standards, UNBS needs to come in very strongly. Things to do with warehouse receipt system, the commodity exchange, because the other thing is that many farmers, unfortunately, are being paid peanuts, but if they handled their produce very well, they actually get 5-6 times the amount of money. So as private sector foundation, we have come in as a special purpose vehicle to start to educate our farmers. We have a program under the MasterCard Foundation on a project called Lead Farm Structure, in which we are trying to get to the cellular level of the farmers and say, look, if you look after your produce very well, have it dried very well, stored very well, and engage into a warehouse receipt system, then it is going to be able to fetch you better money, better returns for your investment, and obviously for us as a country, it's going to benefit us from the export side. But secondly, therein lies another strategic advantage that we need to take advantage of. When we take our maize in corn, in seed form to the other country, we lose many jobs. Number one, we are losing transport. We are losing our millers don't work. 3, the value addition. Maize is at 500 shillings, but when you eat it, when you take it as flour, the price goes up by 3, 4, 5 times. Thirdly, if you convert that maize into value addition, maybe cornflakes, you get 10 times the value. So we are saying, it's high time that we stopped sending away our raw material and start to add value to our commodities. You've heard of things like Pringles. These are our things here. We take out corn, it comes back as Pringles, and our kids are paying 20, 50 times over. So this is high time, and I'm glad that this discussion has come at the time when we had this meeting with the IFC, and at the same time, the Kenyans have put a ban. So maybe it's high time now that we looked inwardly.
Professor is referring to gorillas, which is one of
gorillas, exactly. Gorillas, it's
one of the most marketable.
Exactly.
The market is so huge. Every child at home is asking, bring gorillas when you visit.
Yes. So I think that right now is the time for a very good discussion, and we start putting demands on government to start engaging in the siloization of our country, the warehouse. It's high time we put in action the commodity exchange, which gives us better value, the warehouse receipt system, and all these policies, by the way, are there. It's just that I think some of these are wake-up calls for us to engage, and as private sector foundation and the private sector, this is the time we are getting back to boots on the ground to discuss how we can improve this discussion.
But is it possible for you as private sector, like you hear the name private sector, if government doesn't hold your hand and hold it firm, can you really cross the river, across, the other side to ensure that there is great success out of your innovations, creativity, and all that effort that you're putting in to help the farmers?
Yes, I think that is a very pertinent question, and I think right now the government is in the process of the budget framework paper.
Yes.
And our position has been that, is this budget framework paper, the next budget, is it reflecting the needs of the private sector to improve growth, productivity? Can they put more money in standards?
Yeah.
Because really, this issue of standards is really alarming. And we want, government is the, is custodian of the standards body, UNBS.
Especially through enforcement.
Through enforcement. And UNBS has been suffering from lack of financing and support from, but also, can we attract serious value addition environments within our sector? The cost of borrowing money to put up a silo. And this is where now the issues of cooperatives come in. That now is the time when government should be putting more resources, because cooperatives traditionally are very good enforcers. Peer review of managing some of the processes that we have. So, yeah, I think that government now is the time to come in, but also government comes in two ways. There's the internal support on infrastructure, on financing, but secondly, in the level of negotiation. The East African community, our embassies abroad, what are they doing? This is the time when they should be engaging, and they are part of government infrastructure. So that's a good question, and I think that this is the time government should put in more effort, start engaging with the private sector more, because at the end of the day, it's the private sector which employs, which pays taxes, which suffers some of these backlashes that come as a result of failure to trade with our neighbors.
True.
Yeah.
Mr. Kobi, you picking up from where Stephen has left it. Do you think government is able to engage another gear amidst this kind of trade war with its even more historical neighbor, and at what level should it be doing it? You have had today, it was yesterday and today it was a big debate in Parliament. I am informed, my sources tell me that the President, I think, called the Speaker of Parliament to discuss the same and to try and allay fears that this can go out of hand, that he has spoken to his counterpart in Kenya. But that's of course at a political level, but Ugandans would want to see something more tangible, i.e. that talk to your colleague the other side and then get an assurance that the traders will not suffer the backlash, but two, that inwardly, like you said correctly, that there should be a move to ensure that we are more prepared for such eventualities. Where do you think the place of government should be, and to what extent should it go?
I think it is multi-pronged. Number one, internally we need to reorganize ourselves. We have spoken a lot about our levels of disorganization. Actually, at one time I was going to write a paper on the level of entropy in Uganda, especially in government. Entropy is the level of disorganization and unpredictability of things. When you look, there is something which Mr. Simo has reminded me, that word mindset. We have overused it in Uganda.
And attitude.
Wherever we fail to do things, we say, the mindset, we need to change people's mindset. Nobody is born with a mindset. Let me first tell Ugandans. Economists believe that there are two things on this earth which influence the way people behave.
Two
Two things, nothing more. Number one is incentives, and number two is danger. Nothing else. Our society has incentivized people and all of us to be irresponsible and do things the way we are doing them. Look at, for example, the farmers saying he would want to mobilize, organize, and ensure that they can address the issues of how do they handle food and so on. Where is the incentive? Which incentive mechanism have we built to actually reward the farmers who ensure that food is handled well, that they meet the standards, quality, safety issues, phytosanitary issues are well catered for? Do we reward them? And also, what danger have you sent out to those who mishandle food? First and foremost, that when your maize is not well handled, or your coffee, you Gandhi, harvest coffee which is not yet ripe, you are going to pay price in this way. Doesn't work. In some time back when this society used to be managed by danger, I remember.
When was that?
Studying. You're going to yourself to tell. I remember coffee. Those who wanted to get some money and their coffee was not yet ready, they either had to harvest it at night when they are sure that no one is watching who can watch them. They dry it secretly and be able to mix it with the ripen. Now, it's the new normal that you can go, even you call your neighbors to help you, and you harvest coffee which is not ready. And you pour it there and you add in stones to make kilos. And you go to the market and they give you money. These traders I've talked about, these Kenyans, who come and go to the farmers and get maize which is rotten and full of all of foreign matter. They are doing it in broad day. The trucks come and go, and sometimes even they buy the gardens before they are ready. When it is flowering, they buy the garden. Then they come and they harvest and they go. So let us not talk about mindset. Number one, let us invest in incentive mechanism of rewarding good farmers who actually offer good quality produce to the market. Number two, of punishing those who do abuse food, preparatory and as well as storage. But as we do that, we also invest in the infrastructure. So that's where he has a point that as private sector they need government, because some of these things you need government to create an enabling environment which will guarantee those who are going to invest in the infrastructure, for example, to store very well the cereals, to process them, primary processing, value addition, that they are going to earn money at the end of the day. There is an assured return on investment. That's why some of us have been very good pushers and disciples of industrial policy. That without us in a bigger picture, as Uganda looking at how do we promote industrial policy, government coming in and do its role, an active role, other than just a facilitator, but investing in those data areas where private sector might not be able to return money, we are not going to do much. For example, farmers, now they are producing on an individual basis.
Yeah.
They are not organized. We don't know even how many farmers we have in Uganda. Do you know that? If you went and asked the Minister of Agriculture, and the Permanent Secretary of Agriculture that how many farmers do we have in Uganda of different categories. It doesn't have a number.
Most likely every adult.
We don't. No,
so the subsistence farmers.
We say approximately. You know, we don't know these farmers. We don't know how much land they have, where they are, and how we can organize them.
But isn't the national census supposed to produce those facts if they are well extrapolated?
Yes, the census produces certain numbers, but do we use them in our planning?
That's a big question.
Do we use them? You will find that the very number in the census, we don't know them, many of the people who are planning. So the point I want to say is that we have been painting ourselves in this corner. You know, it's like someone asking you to start painting this room, and you start from the doorway, painting the floor. By the time you reach here, you can't get out of the room. You have painted yourself this way. We have been painting ourselves in tight corners in as far as getting the industrial policy work is concerned. To me, I think we need to get alternative thinking in. Number one, in terms of markets also. We are over-relying on particular markets, and now we have found ourselves in a very tight situation where we are being held at ransom now. We are being blackmailed. You remember that already our farmers cannot export to Rwanda. The border is closed.
The border is closed.
$200 million market disappeared. Kenya has been mistreating them on and off. Now you can bring, no, stop there. Tanzania doesn't want to trade with us. We are now only having markets in South Sudan and DR Congo within this region.
And is the one of South Sudan steady? Is it
the one of South Sudan has had
is it consistent?
Its own problems, but still it has been a wonderful market for us. The farmers will tell you, the traders will tell you that market at least every year you are assured of $300 million coming to Uganda.
Yeah.
Now, thinking as we are going forward, and you know government has put a lot of effort and money in agriculture, promoting agri-industry, agri-business. Are we really going to rely on this market of ESC?
Good question.
Don't we need to look for alternative markets in terms of first, what he said, getting value added on our products, standards adhered to, particularly phytosanitary and sanitary issues, measures must be addressed. That he mentioned about UNBS. Government needs to fund that agency adequately, because modern trade now is being fought using that arsenal of standards. Whoever wants to deny your market will talk of standards.
Yeah.
The next entity, which is very badly funded and very critical in the country, is the Uganda Export Promotions Board. We need to fund our own organizations like export promotions to look for alternative markets and give them targets. If we don't sell $1 billion of maize in the next 5 years, we should close the UNDC Export Promotions Board. Give them a target, give them the money, they will go and get this market. Because Ugandan food is organic. Many markets would want to buy our food, but we are here on just these markets because they can accept rotten maize. They can accept rotten fish. Now, when we don't work on standards and quality, we are not going to be able to capture those other markets. The manufacturers also are complaining. Remember, Uganda Manufacturers Association members have been crying about Kenya. It is crowding them out. Manufactured products, steel products, these fast-moving products, plastics, and Kenya does not want to buy from us, saying our prices are high, saying this and that. But remember, this is a market which is protected by the CET, the Common External Tariff. So there is no way someone can say that your product is more expensive than the one from Brazil. That means the CET has not applied on the Brazil.
Yeah.
You get it?
True.
You have to first put that external tariff on all those products coming from outside this region and effectively enforce it. So the enforcement of the ESC is also a very critical aspect.
Okay. Thanks a lot about those eye-catching revelations. We are going to take a break right now. So many messages and also some of the very interesting discussions that have been going on online, we are going to share with you, the viewer. But let's go for the break right now. And if you want to ask a question or send in a message, make a comment, we are streaming live via Facebook and YouTube as well. UBC, that's on UBC TV on Facebook, and UBC Television Uganda on YouTube. But if you want to join the discussion, you can also join us via our hashtag, which is hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines. Hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines. You can use that hashtag to join in this discussion. I'm together with Mr. Stephen Asimwe, Director for Policy and Business Development at the private sector, sorry, not public, the Private Sector Foundation Uganda, and with Mr. Ramadan Gobi, who is a policy analyst and lecturer at Makerere University Business School. We expected to be together with Honorable Matthias Kasamba, but up to now he hasn't turned up. But the discussion will not wait for him. It has to go on. This is Behind the Headlines. Don't touch your dial.
No one should stop you from finishing what's yours. That's why MTN gives you data bundles that don't expire. Load MTN Freedom Bundles using My MTN app and enjoy the freedom to finish your data bundles.
MTN.
Today tastes like a new tradition, like an old favorite. Tastes like all hands on deck and all eyes on the prize. Today tastes like a piece of the action, and it never tasted this good.
That's their way of stopping HIV. What about you?
Today tastes like a new tradition, like an old favorite. Tastes like all hands on deck and all eyes on the prize. Today tastes like a piece of the action. And it never tasted this good.
Welcome back from the break. This is Behind the Headlines this Wednesday, the 10th of March 2021, and we are looking at the Uganda-Kenya trade wars and you know, the decision by Kenyan government or the regulatory authority, the other side, which is called the Kenya Agriculture and Food Authority, banning some goods, and the argument given is that there are quality concerns about these goods, and the discussions are going on. There is someone called Richard who says some Kenyans import from Uganda to add value and export, and emphasis is good quality. As Ugandans, let us give quality priority before and after value addition for both local and foreign markets. This is someone called Richard. Another person called Oya Michael from Laropi Town Council in Moyo. He says, why concentrate more on economic point of view rather than health hazard of aflatoxins? Stephen and Professor, you hear that. And then, where is the free market zone in the integration? And then someone called Solomon from Kisoro says, Charles, I'm not sure that you are right that the census data captures farmers in their disaggregated categories. And then Reverend Stephen from Chenjojo says, Charles, thanks for that good topic. You have really invited sharp men in the studio. Thanks, Reverend Stephen. I appreciate. And then he says, I think the president should appoint Professor Ramadan as a minister of trade. The man can really analyze issues. Now, now, Ramadan, if they appoint you, I will know that I'm the one who did the lobbying. And then another person here called Nixon says, Mr. Charles, what does our president, Nixon is saying, what does our president mean when he talks about East African market? It appears as if he is alone in it. Other Ugandans are not aware or involved. The president seems to be a referee, a goalkeeper, a player, and a coach of that East African game. And then another person here who does not reveal his name or her name says, good evening, Charles, and the entire team. Good program. I'm Eric from Apache. Yes, he says he's called Eric, actually. And I just want to thank the talk show. It's very interesting, and Ugandans love people. That's coming from, those are all so far coming from SMSs. And then there is someone who says, is Snoop Dogg. He says, my question goes to Stephen Asimwe. He has explained a lot, but why can't we use the newspaper like East Africa, the East African newspaper, to sensitize East African the East Africans, that you know him as Snoop Dogg. This must be someone you know very well. And then another person says, I am Etiang Richard from Mbale and I am enjoying the talk show. On the ban of Ugandan maize by Kenya, it's about protection of Kenyan farmers from cheap Ugandan maize. The Kenyan farmers in Kiambu are shifting from growing maize because of low price, because of imported cheap maize. UBC broadcast a documentary recently where Kenyan farmers in Kiambu have shifted to sugarcane growing so as to get a good income in place of the maize which is performing locally. That's interesting, if true especially, because many people think that then someone here called Nick someone, he says, Charles, I wish you had someone from Operation Wealth Creation on the show because they would be embarrassed. Why? I don't know. I don't understand this.
Why?
Why would they be embarrassed? Maybe whoever sent that message, let us know why you think that they would be embarrassed. And then there is someone called Dandans. He or she says, Mr. Moderator, my question goes to those two gentlemen in the studio, Stephen and Ramadan, that what happened to the food bill? And does UNBS do UNBS in powers of the same? I don't understand that construction. And if not, who will inspect such? Maybe he wanted to say, does UNBS have powers over the same bill? And if not, who will inspect, you know, export commodities? Thank you. I'm Daniel from Gulu. I don't miss watching this program. Thanks, Daniel. But kindly send me another message which is maybe straightforward, and just don't make it so complicated. Just short message and let it be easy to read as we read others as well. And then another person, another viewer called Simpson, he says, thanks Charles and your gang of panelists. I'm Simpson, an aspiring professor. My view is that this impasse, which by all signs might be temporary, shouldn't make us lose sight of the bigger picture, the bigger aspirations of the East African integration. I agree with you, Simpson. And then he says, COVID-19 has caused devastation to every sector, including trade. Let's engage, not protest, because we are all peasants. We have missed Honorable Muhanga. I'm sure Honorable Muhanga has listened in, and a good message there for her. And then someone called Edward. Edward says, I think this debate is timely. Thanks, Edward. And he adds, however, the question would be, where does this place the whole conversation around East African community? I think we are going to touch on that starting immediately after this reading. Isn't this a scratch on the surface? This is an insightful discussion. I am Edward from the National Coalition of Human Rights Defenders in Uganda. And then Bernard Mpirwe says, Charles, what the two gentlemen are explaining makes a lot of sense. But effectively, can this trickle down to the last farmer? Yes, I think so. Of course, the last farmer also listens to us. So this debate will definitely trickle down to them as well. And then I needed to pick some of the discussions that have been held, very interesting discussions that I needed us to also partake of. Let me see where it starts from. Frank Tumwebaze online, or the Honorable Frank Tumwebaze says, maybe this maize ban should provoke us to think our grain export policy and permanently shift from it to exporting its processed products. In this case, export not maize grain, but flour and animal feeds. Stephen, I think, touched on that. And then someone called Caroline Beryl says, for how long will this industrialization story be sung with minimal action? What's stopping us from starting or gaining momentum? And then someone called Peter Kamalingin says, thanks. The problem with Uganda's talk without the problem is that Ugandans talk without meaningful action. The president's spoken industrialization forever, but little transformative action. Many of the so-called China industrialists were so ready to offer concessions and tax waivers. Corruption is the one killing us. I don't... and then someone called Godwin Toko says, it's timely to have a conversation on how we handle food post-harvest, and perhaps have some heads roll at UNBS. The aflatoxins will continue to shorten the lives of Ugandans if we take it that Kenyans are just against us and do nothing about them. And then another person called Discover Kampala says, please first realize that the maize ban was due to the chemicals Kenya says we are using and are harmful. Making the same maize into flour won't remove the said chemicals. We need to investigate if their claim is true and deal with it or prove them wrong. Those are some of the messages that I've picked online. I've not yet picked from, there are others that have come just this evening as we started the discussion. But I'm going to pick some of them and then we continue engaging with them on this discussion. Stephen, yep. People are asking, where does this leave the East African community? And apart from the report of our president, His Excellency President Museveni speaking to his counterpart, His Excellency Uhuru, the other side, do you think there is something else that should be done? Should their discussion just be at a level of politicians? Or do you think that discussions like this should also tell the presidents that involve private sector in this?
That's a very, very good question, Charles. My opening statement was, there are two things here. There's the external non-tariff barriers, our relationships with our neighbors, on the one hand, which brings into question the issue of integration. I think that Uganda has been the most positive. If there was an index of countries that have really bent backwards, we've had almost literally all our neighbors closing on us.
Yeah, at one point or the other.
You remember there was at one point they said even your cement is not 50 kilos. So some countries banned our cement from crossing, you know. So I don't know whether there were aflatoxins in the cement or not, but that's for another debate. But having said that, this is a very strange or very interesting coincidence. It was only 2 weeks ago that Kenya took the chairmanship of the East African Community.
Actually,
so right now, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta is the new chairman of the East African community.
Yeah. And he took over from us?
He took over from Rwanda.
Oh, from Rwanda, yes.
At the same time, the Kenyans have taken the seat of the Secretary General of the East African community. The East African community is headquartered in Arusha, in Tanzania, which is one of the countries that is suffering from the ban. So there are big question marks, and I think what is happening right now is that people who have been, countries that have been trying to put bans on different, the ones now on the, all the microphones are on, and the cameras are shooting in their direction. It brings in some very strong responsibilities as far as integration is concerned. If you are the chairman of an organization that is supposed to support integration, and yet your member state is the one now imposing these interesting new measures, there are a lot of question marks, and I think there is going to be a lot of debate. But secondly, I think that in the last 48 hours, we've heard that there are behind the scenes discussion. This is where diplomacy comes in. This is where negotiations come in. And like you rightly said, it is high time that the private sector in Uganda, with its various organizations, like we have a Grain Council, Kenya has a Grain Council. There is an East African Grain Council. So we are going to go back on the table and start just discussions. The East African Business Council is going to come up. I saw a statement which was issued by the East African Law Society. We are going to see more discussions at a higher level. Each one of these member states has a minister and a ministry of East African affairs. All these questions are going to come up, and I think there will be a lot of what is known as shuttle diplomacy between the different players. But while that is going on, for us as a private sector, we have a sister organization called KEPSA, the Kenya Private Sector Association. And it's going to call for further discussion. Now, there is one thing that people are not answering, and probably at this point in time we need to say it, that in Uganda in 2015, we got a grain policy. And the grain policy is very clear on standards, on storage, on certification, on preservation of these commodities. A very, very clear one. One of the things that Professor Ramadan and Charles, did you know that even among the trucks that were stopped were trucks with consignments that had certification? They were certified.
From this side?
Oh, yes. They were clean. Very, very clean, with all boxes ticked with certification of good quality standards. They were stopped. So even in the enforcing the ban, our brothers across the border did not follow standard operating procedures. So while you make an arbitrary ban, they did not put in place a mechanism for what if there were consignments that met all the standards. So for us, we feel that was an infringement on our trading relationship with our brothers across. Now, this grain policy that we have is a result of a lot of discussions and measures that have taken place in arriving at that policy. And the Grain Council today issued a statement in which we were invoking some of these former policies that were enacted in 2015. And these were, among other things, that what if you have certified quality players? Do you accept? Yes or no? And our answer is yes. 2, if you have managed the aflatoxins, has the Kenyan Food and Drug Administration proven that actually you were all your consignments were either with aflatoxins or they didn't have aflatoxins? The other thing is that for us as grain players, have we met the required standards? And therefore we can take that to court and say, by the way, this ban, whereas it was enacted, actually we have X number of tons that were clean, and therefore we demand that they go across and be consumed on the other side. 4, this calls into question our internal systems. And I think Professor Gobi mentioned it, and I hinted on it earlier. This is the time for us now to engage on equipping, supporting, and facilitating our quality standards bodies. And by the way, we have our own peer review systems within the Grain Council. The Grain Council, by the way, is very organized, and they are members of the private sector association. I think that this is the time they now need to start to be heard, to be felt, and to work in consonance with the government. 5, the issue of the warehouse receipt system. It answers almost what Professor Gobi said, incentives. The warehouse receipt system is supposed to ensure that when we bring our goods that have met the quality standards, then good prices are given to us, and which again brings into question something that has been on the discussion board but has been in the coolers, the issue of the commodity exchange. Like you have the stock exchange, I think this is the time we start to improve and support our commodity exchange. So with that said, I think once we can do all of these things quickly, effectively, and efficiently, then we can go on the negotiating table and say our back-end system has been sorted.
Okay.
But we have learned a few lessons in the last 1 year, Charles and Ramadan, that the way we handled COVID is now the way, in many ways, we should start to handle some of these challenges that are coming up. The standard operating procedures. If you look at the way government handled it, from the president to the ministers, to members of parliament, the district leaderships, up down to the LC1 system, isn't it time now we started handling issues of standards, of quality, that we should have a national buzzword to all the farmers? Can you have SOPs for the way you handle maize, for coffee, for tea, for vegetables, and really start to put some of these health. Now we do economic measures that have standard operating procedures.
But maybe as far as our crops are concerned, we don't have the danger. Referring to what the two drivers of action that Gobi referred to, he said incentives and danger.
Yes, but the danger is now price, and our goods being denied entry into other countries. You see, that danger is, and I'll give you the example of coffee. Right now, coffee beans are going for anywhere between 4,000, 5,000 shillings for a kilo. But our brothers in Ethiopia right now are earning 10,000 shillings per kilo, because in Ethiopia, the level of enforcement of coffee is at the highest level. So incentives for handling very well, punishment, the carrot and stick. Another word for it is we punish you for poor performance. We incentivize, we give you a carrot, we reward you, a reward system. And so there are some internationally accepted standards that we can start, and we actually have these laws. These policies are there, but now is the time to call into action so that we start standard operating procedures even for commodities like maize.
Okay. Ramadan, the issue of the question on the future of the East African community and what active role it should play in disagreements like this. In fact, following the question from the viewer, Stephen has even added more flesh to the context that Kenya has just taken over 2 major leadership positions of the community, which should put them in a position of, you know, perhaps acting better and with more, and show more leadership. What do you think about that?
I don't know whether there are some Kenyans who are watching us.
Many.
Because I would want really to tell them and our friends, the Tanzanians, that they could be having an advantage over all of us because they are locking us in their land. We are landlocked. And who's locking us? In this land here in the hinterland, Kenya and Tanzania. But even countries which have built very big economies and they are at the levels of self-sustaining and self-actualization, they really take it seriously that cooperation is the way to go. The future of humanity lies in cooperation and integration. There have been very good steps we have taken. I know that it's been a very hard journey which we have walked through the FTA up to the common market which we have now. And some reversals have been in there, especially when it came to opening up our borders to allow the free flow of goods, of services, and also of human beings. And some of these countries naturally went into some protective mode. How do we protect our territories? All these conversations we are having, they are coming from that. The leaders are under pressure by their own people. Even here in Uganda, there are people, until now, when they see that their maize is being locked out and so on, who are questioning why, for example, Uganda is so obsessed with the ESC. Some people you find, some are very well educated. They are saying, what are we benefiting from that thing? That thing is political. That thing is for those big leaders. No. You know, when we integrate their innumerable benefits that we get. And I don't think we have reached a point where we should really fight each other in this thing called the trade war. This is not a beg my neighbor policy that Uganda should retaliate. We should instead sit on a table now that Kenya is actually in the leadership, the good thing, and also we are lucky that we are having a leader who's obsessed with the integration, more obsessed with it. That for him actually he wants to promote political federation, because he feels that without political federation you cannot integrate economically. And he could be having a point, because even in the US, when Abraham Lincoln took on all those southern states that wanted to secede, he said, let us first now integrate them by force.
The union.
The union.
The union started from that.
To ensure that now they work backwards
Texas, Florida,
to work out the economy. All those Arizona and so California. They wanted to secede. They wanted to remain as independent states. In East Africa, we can't do that, but we can negotiate, because at least now everybody has tasted the beauty of integration. We have married each other. We are moving across borders without passports.
With or without integration, we would marry.
Oh, no. Without integration, it was difficult to cross and first get a visa to talk to a girl across the border. Now,
they have come to our university
here. We are in
here.
the same schools. We are sharing markets. You know, I went to Nairobi before COVID. And you know, whenever I go to Nairobi, I don't even sleep in a hotel. I've taught so many Kenyans that the moment I arrive in Nairobi and I'm walking in the streets there, someone is saying, oh, you have come, come and they take you to Eastlands. And so these people now, they are eating katogo. They cook katogo in Nairobi now, and they picked it from here. Wow. That's our technology of katogo, which we improvised because of lack of enough steel. You know, we didn't have enough steel, so they used to cook food first, then they remove it, then they cook sauce. Until someone said, why don't we cook them together? So they put them and they cooked katogo. Now Kenyans are cooking it. It is these small things which you have already achieved that people have seen the beauty of integration. I know the challenge we are facing now is that we are almost similar economies in structure, because Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan, DR Congo that want to enter. When I looked at the data, you may think that they are the same society. The levels of economic diversification, they are the same. We are all farming economies, agrarian economies, mainly peasant farming. We have very limited industrial base, manufacturing. Actually, there is someone who said they have had the industrialization story when you are reading, being sung without action. I think in Uganda, actually, the situation is changing as far as industrialization is concerned. I'm a demagogic supporter of industrial policy, and I've been concentrating my research in that area. I would want to tell you that manufacturing now, for the first time since Uganda was, since pre-colonial times, not even since Uganda was formed, but since pre-colonial times, that manufacturing now contributes 15% of GDP. It contributed 15% of GDP for the first time in the history of this country in 2019. It had never happened. In 2010, we were contributing only 8% of GDP. That's the value add of manufacturing. And that has been the figure since independence. We had never crossed the 10% line. Now we crossed it. And we didn't just cross it. Of course, there have been deliberate efforts to industrialize. When you look at the industrial parks which are being built, when you look at the SME industries which private sector is putting up on these roads, when you move this Jinja Road after Mukono, that Imbarara areas, you move this road of Bombo, you move every road now you move, Masaka Road, there are industries which are coming up. Yeah. They are not just mushrooming. There is a deliberate policy to pull them, and I think that's, for me, the future of this region. As long as we remain just farming maize to put it in a sack with its weevils and all those other aflatoxin, and we get another bag of sesame, we call it simsim, we send. We get another bag of beans with insects, we send another to South Sudan. We are not going to change these societies. We need to invest in industry. And the good thing is now our government is committed to it, because when you look at NDP3 is about this. Yeah. When you look at what is going on in as far as the budgeting now is concerned, infrastructure for industry, and also the overall effort is there. So I would need really to comment on that way. The issue of how do we address this now at the East African level, to me, I think it is squarely, we are going back, we should go back to the drawing board. We have been leaving a lot of things to go under the bridge without addressing them. For example, when other countries see that Rwanda has closed the border for 1 year, 2 years, now they are going to 3 years, and nothing happens.
Nothing has been done.
Nothing is done. Then they see Tanzania saying, we don't need your sugar. For us, we shall buy sugar from Sri Lanka. Because it is cheaper. But it continues to sell you the rice. Because here Ugandans are eating rice from Tanzania.
True.
But Tanzania doesn't want to buy their sugar. So my friends in Busoga who are growing the sugar canes, they are, after selling the sugar, they have to buy rice. Now, the one from whom the rice came from doesn't want to buy their sugar cane. and nothing happens on Tanzania. Why would you be so much surprised that Kenya also learns from that experience and behaves that way? I think the only country which has not stopped things from coming, even when announced, is Uganda. I heard us threatening, we don't want dressed chicken and the eggs. But you know, they continue coming in our supermarkets. I would really feel that the East African leaders need to call a summit now of all these key stakeholders of East African community. And I don't know whether the East African Community Secretariat is still active. It used to be very strong those days of Honorable Manyamushega and Chiraso and others. Now I don't know.
Chiraso was one of the deputies.
Yes, I don't know what's happening there, because I no longer feel that there is someone who's acting as a steward of this community. I think it is just moving on autopilot, and as a result of that, many people have taken advantage of the absence of leadership. I feel the politician is more active than the technical people who should be addressing these issues.
Okay.
Because politicians will not solve everything. Lastly, Charles, for me, you talked, I think Mr. Simo talked about the issue of getting the farmers to adhere to the standards and so on.
Yeah.
The good example you can give here is the milk industry.
The milk industry.
We used to have very big challenge with our milk here when they used to add water. And this water they were adding when they were getting it from the roadside, the pond. These boys they give to take to the cooler, they add water, dirty water. So by the time you buy the milk, it has gotten rotten, you know. They did one thing in the water, in the milk industry. They enforced it at the level of the cooler. If you bring your milk, they test. If they find water, they don't even give it to you that you take it. They pour it there.
When you're seeing?
When you're seeing.
Even if it is a truck?
Absolutely. Even if it's a truck. For a trucker, they just drop there some tablet and the entire milk goes bad. So as a result of that, the farmers and the people, all of the chain, that supply chain of the milk industry started to self-regulate. They are the ones who keep the milk safe and good for human consumption. And that's why you see our milk now, is the industry is flourishing to the extent that Kenya could not believe that we had all that milk in Uganda.
But didn't they stop, Stephen, I don't know whether I'm wrong or right, didn't they stop one of the milk companies
there
from
was
exporting?
A competition, you know. The president of, let me say this, the president of Kenya is a milk man. He has a company which is one of the largest companies in Africa here.
Brookside.
Brookside is here.
And
but it is in Uganda here.
Yes.
It took over the one in industrial area.
The dairy. So they were competing with Lato. And that's how it was just a competition at that level.
Actually, Lato was more superior to all these needles that were going into Kenya. So
what has happened? Have they now reopened for them? They have not allowed them?
In fact, in our discussion today, one of the gentlemen...
But who will protect people like us, industrialists like those, like the owners of Lato, who will protect them under the East African community? And for me, I think that that's an important thing for private sector to be pushing for.
Absolutely.
And you know now what the private sector is doing? Some of the players, especially under UMA, they have decided to relocate. Each now does what Brookside did.
You spread to the region?
Yeah. They are taking the farms to those countries. You find now our steel millers, they are setting up in Kenya so that they can be able to sell to the Kenyan market. as Kenyan investors. And this is not good for us, because for us we are not protecting them to get market access. And I think we need to pull up socks in that area. Otherwise we are going to lose a lot of these investors.
Yeah, maybe Stephen, to add on to what you need to add on to what, in that respect, what Professor Ramadan has said. Are there any attempts by the private sector to engage, maybe through the highest level, the leadership of this country, to engage Kenya and say, you know what, you need to leave the market open, like we do in Uganda, and so that it is free? Is it possible for private sector to do, so that people like the owners of Lato can find a free market across the region?
You see, that's a good question again. For me, as far as I'm concerned, this issue is this was a great precedent for two reasons. One, my background is media.
Yeah.
And today's media, and I must applaud them, today's media was unanimous. There were complete sections of the New Vision and Monitor which gave spotlight on the issues concerning this ban. And they broke it down. What are farmers saying? What are our leaders saying? What was said in the floor of Parliament? What should the president do? And I mean, since morning, my phone has been flooded with the social media discussions and debates, away from the politics, what we've been used to.
We don't eat politics. Many of us don't eat from the politics.
So essentially what has happened is that the spotlight has gone to what is really where the issue is itching hardest. And so 2 consecutive days in Parliament, on the floor of Parliament, there's been consistent debate on this thing.
Yeah.
And pressure. Of course, I know that there is what has been debated on Parliament, the talk shows in different places, and obviously what UBC is doing now. But I think now the pressure is on for the leadership at the executive level to intervene directly. And as far as we are concerned as private sector, is we are calling upon Parliament, calling on government to negotiate this thing. This is something that is negotiable.
Yeah.
Given that there is a certain constituency that has been upholding the standard. It's not that the entire consignment from Uganda has aflatoxins. No. We have very good warehouse systems. We have very good post-harvest handling facilities. Yes, it is true that there has been an official and informal trade taking place, but there are also those who have been doing very well. And therefore, can we start with those ones so that they can take these exports out there? But 2, to build on to what Professor Ramadan has said, that if there's this sleeping giant called the East African community, can they please wake up for the sake of reviving our East African community? We don't want to have an EAC 3. We had an East African community from 1967 to 1977. It broke down for selfish reasons. 2, we have been building consistently over time. And like my brother said, around the 3rd administration, we started to see an EAC that is invisible, that is quiet, that is dormant, to the point that some countries are not even paying their dues. I've had interactions with
Actually, the term, the coalition of the willing, became very popular.
Exactly.
So meaning that we are united, but yes, you can do as you wish.
Exactly. When I was in government previously in my former station,
get unwilling.
We had that Northern Corridor infrastructure program, which was doing very well. And then suddenly it broke down. And then suddenly all of us are running in different directions. So I think it's high time that the East African community invoked and revoked some of these protocols that bind us together as a region. Now remember that the population is growing. Right now Kenya has a population of close to 55 million. Uganda is about 45 million. Tanzania is pushing towards 60. The EAC is expanding westwards. If Congo, which has applied to join the East African community, is seeing small fights like this, do you think they are willing to join? What sort of incentives? Are they going to join an institution that has bickering neighbors who are fighting over maize, etc.? So I think that really these are the times we need to go back. And I think Parliament now, the onus is on Parliament to start to debate both laws that are going to help in integration, but also to look inwardly on some of these issues we are raising, supporting our nascent industries, supporting infrastructure, supporting the Uganda National Bureau of Standards, which is very, very critical. But also start to, they said that necessity is the mother of invention.
Yes.
Can we, for heaven's sake, move away from planting maize from Jan 1 to December 31st? Start looking at value addition. At another level, for instance, go beyond maize flour to Pringles. Can we look at this huge Nigerian market, which is consumptive in nature, fix our railway system so that we can now have a railway that moves from Mombasa to Kinshasa, start looking at fixing our cargo system. We now have 3 flights to Kinshasa, Uganda Airlines. If we pushed a cargo system whereby we are flying some of these commodities across to our neighbors, it will add value. There's been discussions that the government is going to invest in roads into the DRC, which, by the way, has overtaken Egypt as the 3rd most populous country in Africa. And therefore, this is a good market. So from strategic point of view,
they are now about 90 million?
Yes, it's the biggest French-speaking country in the world. It has incredible numbers and consumptive. They are a consumptive industry. But in future, they could also put a ban. So for me, I think that going forward, number one, let us go and negotiate with Kenya. There is no harm in negotiation. Let's take advantage of.
What extent can we push? Do we have the leverage? Do we have? Because, and I needed you to touch on that. The two of you, maybe in 1 minute each. If push came to shove, does Uganda have capacity? You know, using the, what do they call it in diplomacy? Reciprocity. If Kenya bans 1, 2, 3, can we also pull the same? Even if it is not good for good neighborliness, in order to force negotiations, do we have that capacity?
I think that and my brother Ramadan touched on it, we have a president who believes in dialogue. And I have been in discussions myself with the members of private sector in the area of sugar. We've seen, you know, some opening coming up, both with Kenya and Tanzania. We are now sending more sugar exports to our brothers across. So even with engagement, but also we need to, and again, go back to the issue of visibility and publicity, that the media now should come out and highlight some of these things so that we cause some pressure. Parliament should go on the floor and start to discuss pro-Uganda positions. And then for us as private sector, we are going to also be proactive with our brothers across. We have our sister agency called KEPSA, which is Kenya Private Sector Association. We have the East African Business Council, which is again created to foster this kind of discussion. But for now, I think that let's wait for what is, I know by tomorrow morning, there will be some developments that have taken place.
Okay.
And let's see how that plays out.
Okay. Maybe then we are left with under 5 minutes, I think. We need to get out of this place, but way forward from what we have been discussing, and given the different levels of discussions in Parliament, at the entire day Ministry of Trade, the managers have been meeting. We were supposed to have some of their experts from there, but we couldn't because they were involved in different meetings. And then, of course, this discussions between heads of state? What is the way forward? Starting with Stephen, and then I come to Ramadan.
For me, I think that the way forward is that one is the discussions with Kenya first, and also under the auspices of the East African community, that we need to invoke the protocols that bring us together. We need to come and get common solutions, and also harmonize. When you put a ban, have you also put a ban that says, can I check whether or not you have got the aflatoxins?
Yes.
Like in the case of the milk, which my brother mentioned, because those that infrastructure is available at the border with our people. Even the Kenyans have it.
Sorry to interrupt you. Actually, you reminded me. Someone, I think there was I was discussing this matter with some MPs from the border at the eastern, on the eastern route, I think Tororo, and one person said, if Kenya is really being honest, out of the 175 trucks that they sent back,
yes,
did all of them have the aflatoxins? If they are being honest. That was an important question.
Yes.
Because why didn't you test truck by truck and then say this one does not meet the standard and this one is okay? So 20 are okay, 150 are not okay. Yes. Even if they are that worse off. But anyway, sorry for interrupting.
No, I think that adds value to it. You see, what happened in that particular incident, even trucks that had genuine commodities that were tested, certified with papers,
like
were
you said,
turned back. So for us, as far as we are concerned, that is unfair. It is it's an unjust system, it's an unfair system, and we condemn it because we have paperwork to prove that actually those consignments had a clean bill of health. So that is one. Two is the issue of our internal systems. Like I said earlier, the World Bank has put aside some resources to support, to facilitate commodity handling procedures, which, for lack of a better word, standard operating procedures. We'll use the new normal now. But even standard operating procedures should take place. We have a grain policy that is fantastic, and I think that all we need now is to do the enforcement and to ensure that it works. But also now government could kindly support the warehouse receipt system, and then we move into a commodity exchange, because it brings into element of incentives. Once we have good commodities bring you good price, good prices help the economy. So, but at the end of the day, let us start with the issue of negotiating with our neighbors.
Okay, good. Final word, Mr. Ramadan, way forward on this.
I think, number one, this is coming at a very bad timing when we are just recovering from this pandemic, and the people of Uganda, the last thing they would want is any disruption in their effort to get back to normal in terms of earning some income, because COVID has battered us all. And two, it's also coming at a time when farmers have been squeezed out of other markets, as I've said, Rwanda and Tanzania. So Kenya is our reliable partner in trade, and therefore it would be incumbent to the stakeholders, especially government, to ensure that they resolve this matter as urgently as possible, so that the farmers can access these markets and sell their produce. And I think with what he has said, we also need to look ourselves in the mirror and also address those particular issues which could really give a good excuse to to some of these people who want to start a trade war against us. Let us address the standards, let us look for also alternative markets, and let us add value to our products. In most cases, we have spoken about all these things, but we don't walk the talk. Let us walk the talk.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Ramadan Gobi, our panelist on the show, Behind the Headlines. Thanks a lot, Stephen Asimwe from the private sector wing, and thanks a lot to all of you out there who has been part of this show. And I want to thank so much the technical team and the producers. Thanks so much for to Ivan and Morris and all the other team members, Ronald and Fred and William and all the others who participated in ensuring this show takes place and takes place as a success. And to all of you out there who participate every Wednesday 10 to midnight when we have this show from the comfort of your sitting room, you are most important to this show, and we really celebrate you. Today, government started vaccinating people against COVID, with the Minister of Health, Dr. Jane Ruth Acheng, taking the lead, and we are going to support you whenever we can, and we pray that everything goes well so that we can be safe. COVID is still here with us, and we need to continue keeping the standard operating procedures until we see the last bit of it. Until next week, God bless you all, and God bless Uganda. Bye-bye.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Wolves are amazing animals, but they are also known for killing farm animals like chickens and sheep.
Last night, my roommate called, saying she was hurt, so I rushed home, but she was fine. It was just a joke.
That's Nicole for you. She's done that to me before, too. It's risky to cry wolf like that again and again.
Yeah, one day she might really need help, and you know what? We won't be there.
A long time ago, a shepherd was bored while guarding his sheep. So, for fun, he would shout, "Wolf!" Each time, villagers ran to help him. And each time, they found no wolf. Well, then a wolf really did attack. But when the boy cried, "Wolf!" no one came. You can probably guess how this story ends. And that's English in a Minute. Welcome to English in a Minute. Window dressing is arranging products in a store window to make them look nice and appealing.
Window dressing.
Anna, I just invested in this great new company, and you should too. It's a sure thing. And look at all the free stuff you get.
Oh, you should be careful, Jonathan. All that free stuff could just be window dressing.
No way. The stock is doing great. Oh no, it's down 5 points from yesterday.
Well, at least you got a free bag and a hat.
Window dressing is meant to attract customers. That's okay for a store. But in daily life, window dressing makes something seem better than it really is. As you might expect, we mostly use this expression in a critical way. And that's English in a Minute.
this weekend on UBC.
Contrary to the belief that this is a male-dominated world, women provide the foundation of power, grace, wisdom, justice, creativity, and hope. For our Women's Day special, Chilling pays homage to this trailblazer, Agaba Adela, a journalist, lawyer, and businesswoman.
Everything I touch, I don't give it 10%. I give everything I touch 110%. So they see potential and take a chance on me, and it works out. Do not sit on your talent. Do not sit on your passion. If you love baking, bake.
Do it.
If you love to run, run.
If you love to present,
if you love to present, come do it.
Yeah.
And do it 100%. Wow. Even if you're getting paid on.
Daily new coronavirus cases are down to around 9,000. That's less than half the average figure for January. And it's partly due to a mass inoculation campaign that was launched in December. We discussed Russia's anti-COVID measures and how they fit into the global picture with the WHO representative to Russia.
There has been a very good combination of recommendations, restrictions, which were not full lockdowns, although in some regions they were more close to that, and I would say an awareness of people. But this is very critical at the moment to maintain this awareness.